Waldameer Park in Erie, Pennsylvania was finally put on the map as a destination park in 2008 for one sole reason, that being their brand new wooden coaster for the year, Ravine Flyer II. Ravine Flyer II is a gravity group wooden coaster made famous for its usage of terrain and crossover moments with Peninsula Drive. It is arguably one of the most unique and underrated attractions in the world, and in this video I'll be giving an in-depth analysis of the ride. But before we get into the review, you need to know a little bit about how this ride came to be. I, however, will not be going over this and will instead have the Ravine Flyer King himself, InsaneCoasterJunkie, take the spotlight.
In 1992, Waldameer announced a 10-year expansion of the park, with several new rides, and at the tail end of the expansion would debut a new roller coaster called Ravine Flyer II for the 2000 season. However, a series of legal battles ranging from noise concerns to building a bridge over Peninsula Drive put this coaster on hold several times, and it went through several manufacturers in the process. Ding Corporation would be the first interest in 1992, but after going bankrupt, Custom Coasters International, or CCI, would take over plans in 1994. But they too would go bankrupt after 2002. By 2006, Gravity Group, fresh off installing Hades and Voyage, was contracted to build the coaster, and finally in the summer of 2007, the coaster was greenlit for construction, and it would open to guests on May 17, 2008, to critical acclaim, resulting in a 20% increase of attendance that season, and it has stuck to record high numbers ever since. Going over the stats, the coaster is only 85 feet tall, but due to the natural ravine in the back of the park, the drop is 120 feet tall, with a total elevation change of 130 feet. The coaster reaches 60 miles an hour at the bottom of the first drop, which cements this as the tallest and fastest wooden coaster in the state of Pennsylvania. The ride features nearly 10 crossovers, 10 moments of airtime, 3 tunnels, and an overall length of 3,061 feet. The ride was manufactured by the Gravity Group with trackwork support from Great Coasters International, or GCI. The ride also operates with two 24-passenger PTC 2-bench trains with a ratcheting lap bar and seatbelt. Now to get into the ride's block zones. For those who are unfamiliar, blocks.
Anyways, enough of that, let's get into the ride's layout. You start off with taking a small left-hand dip before extending the ride's 80-foot lift hill. At the top of the lift hill you are greeted with might just be one of the best views on any coaster of Lake Erie filling the horizon. These good views, however, do not last very long as you only have a few seconds to take it in before plunging down the 120-foot drop. If I'm being completely honest, Ravine Flyer's drop might be the only overrated part of the coaster. While some praise it for giving some sustained ejector airtime, I find it to fall below expectations. The drop, however, is still a really great moment nonetheless, giving about 2 to 3 seconds of sustained floater airtime. Ravine Flyer II then hauls into its first speed hill, and just wow. If I had to describe this moment in just one word, I would say perfection. From an off-ride perspective, this element is located over Peninsula Drive, giving a really cool spectacle, and then on-ride you get around 2 seconds of strong flow ejector airtime. After the speed hill, Ravine Flyer II then enters its 85-foot tall turnaround. This element starts off with a small left-hand turn before quickly switching directions, giving you a good dose of lateral forces. The coaster then traverses a long 180-degree turn before reaching the peak of the turnaround. At this moment you're greeted with even more amazing views of Lake Erie before once again plunging into a large drop. The turnaround's drop salad does not get very much airtime though, as it loses a good amount of momentum at its peak. However, all the speed that was lost quickly gets restored on the following drop. Ravine Flyer II then enters another speed hill going over Peninsula Drive, which feels very similar to the previous moment. I will say that I think I prefer the second hill over the first overall. Although the airtime does not seem as strong, it feels to be more sustained than the first speed hill. After crossing Peninsula Drive for the final time, Ravine Flyer II flies into back-to-back airtime hills. The first hill is fully enclosed in a tunnel, giving about a second of strong floater airtime, while the second is located outside of the tunnel, once again giving a strong second of floater airtime. Ravine Flyer II then coasts through an elongated turn which climbs back up the park level terrain before rising into an airtime hill located over the chain lift. This hill gets a lot of hate from people for being a lot worse than it looks, however I find it to be a really great moment of the ride, giving around 1 to 2 seconds of floater airtime. Ravine Flyer II then enters a left-hand turn before rising into a twisted airtime hill. This hill gives a second of floater airtime combined with some minor lateral forces, making it a great moment on the coaster. After the twisted airtime hill, you enter Ravine Flyer's iconic 90-degree turn. This moment gives some really good sideways hang time as it goes relatively slow through this element. Following the 90-degree turn, you rocket down a 60-foot twisted drop before rising into the ride's finale. The finale starts off by leveling out, giving a surprisingly strong pop of flow ejector airtime in the front that caught me off guard. You then enter a small right-hand turn into a bunny hill. This still gives a good pop of floater airtime when the ride is warmed up. However, if you ride Ravine Flyer earlier in the day, you may not get any airtime at all in this moment. After the bunny hill, you take another small right-hand turn before sliding into the brake run. You have just experienced a minute and a half of pure wooden greatness. If I'm being 100% honest, Ravine Flyer II is a little bit shorter than preferred, with a drop-to-brake ride time of only 47 seconds. However, it makes up for it by fitting so much in such a short period of time. Despite being a near-perfect ride, Ravine Flyer still has its share of flaws. There are two problems that most people have with Ravine Flyer II, and the first of which is the ride's roughness. Personally, I am not bothered whatsoever by Ravine Flyer II's roughness, but yes, it does beat you around a little bit, specifically at the bottom of the two major drops. The second problem people have with the ride are the pacing issues in the second half. This to me is completely false. Although a very hot take, I think I prefer this twisted second half over the airtime-held first half of the ride. Now that we got the two major cons out of the way, let's move on to my final thoughts on Ravine Flyer II. But before I give my thoughts, let's let our special guest InsaneCoasterJunkie give us his verdicts on the ride.
For those who know my channel, they will know that I am the king of Ravine Flyer II. Riding this coaster over 1,300 times in my life, and 560 of those rides from last season. But I'll quickly sum up my thoughts by saying that this is my favorite roller coaster that I have ridden, and it's the best gravity group on this side of the Cuyahoga.
Now with his thoughts aside, time to give my final score on the coaster. I gave Ravine Flyer II a score of 9 out of 10. Ravine Flyer II is easily the best wooden coaster I've ever experienced and holds a solid spot in my top 5, but I cannot give it a perfect score due to the roughness and rather short length of the ride. Anyways, that is it for today's video, and I would like to give a huge shout out to InsaneCoasterJunkie for collaborating with me on this review. Being a new channel on YouTube, I'd also appreciate it if you maybe considered subscribing. Since you've made it all the way to the end of the video, it's clear you enjoyed it, and subscribing would just help me so much. Anyways, thank you all for watching, and goodbye.